I have the honor of inviting the dignitaries for the inaugural session to the podium. Mr. Ghanshyam Prasad, Chairman, Central Electricity Authority. Sir, please come. Mr. R.P. Singh, former Chairperson, UP Electricity Regulatory Commission. Please come on stage. Mr. Vimal Mahendru, India representative on IEC Standardization Committee. We have Sir Singh up. Raina? Mr. Anil Raval, Managing Director, IntelliSmart. Yeah, please. Everybody, please take your seat. We are late by 20 minutes, so there is a minor change in the sequence. I'll give a brief introduction what we are going to do today, followed by some introductory remarks by our co-organizer, Indian Energy Exchange, Mr. Rohit Bajaj, and followed by inaugural address by Mr. Ghanshyam Prasad, whom we promised to relieve here before 10 o'clock. Ladies and gentlemen, as part of India Smart Grid Week, India Smart Utility Week, in March we have conducted a half-day session on digital tools for management of distributed solar PV connected to the medium voltage and low voltage grid. It was a half-day workshop which we conducted in partnership with the International Energy Agency, and that had participation of different stakeholders from large section of several countries: India, Brazil, Morocco, Algeria, and our neighboring countries, and obviously the European countries and United States, which many agencies participate every year in our ISUW. And that event, different stakeholders brought out different problems which they encounter with large number of, increasing share of solar PV connected to the low voltage and medium voltage grid. In India today we have about 11 gigawatt of distributed PV connected to the medium voltage and low voltage grid, and in our every day that 11 gigawatt produces close to 45 to 50 gigawatt hour of energy, which are not taken into our scheduling as of now, because we don't know where it is, how it is. And we have been advocating 2-3 things in this. One, having a registry of solar rooftop. So a national registry, which many countries like Australia and California and several other people have done. That's a digital registry. You at least know where these resources are connected to it. And number 2, all new connections should be on a smart inverter rather than the regular inverter. So these two advocacy which we have been doing has been heard by all stakeholders, and we are almost on the verge of issuing a smart inverter standard. It's IEEE 1547 2018 being adopted by BIS, and the draft standard is already in circulation for comments, and we hope in end of this month itself or in August, IEA standard for smart inverter will be there, and thereafter we will be undertaking a demonstration, sample demonstration of installation of smart inverter in Malavinagar substation of BRPL. So it's all selected, and afterwards we'll test all the use cases of it, and thereafter would request CEA, CARC to issue appropriate guidelines. At least all new distributed PV connection is through smart inverter. We don't encounter the same situation which Germany or Australia, millions of inverter they had to replace it. So we don't, much before we reach there, we at least start doing it, and existing inverter on a phased manner we could change that. And out of this 11 gigawatt of distributed PV connected to the grid, about 4.5 gigawatt is rooftop, actual rooftop, of which 50% is in Gujarat. Incidentally, and that is one reason we have been saying it has become, rooftop PV has become commercially or economically attractive to most categories of customers, and no need for any subsidy from Government of India, people find it already within 2-3 years is the return on investment, and people are buying it. And Gujarat is a good model. Once somebody understood the value of money and they understood it, one man installing it, his neighbor installing, opposite house installing, it's going at fast rate than they are adding every month more than what the rest of the country is adding. The same revolution should happen outside also. We have been saying that no need for subsidy, but we should make systems available. People still ask which model to buy it. Like you buy an appliance, going to your nearest appliance store. Sarkar generation is monitoring sitting here. Is rooftop. So, like you go to buy a washing machine or an air conditioner, walk down to your nearest appliance store. You should have at least 3-4 models of 1 kilowatt, 2 kilowatt kind of models there, and a technician from the store comes and install on your house. This is what we have to advocate and make it happen. So and we have also done rooftop solar with Mr. Singh's support. We had done a first pilot project in UP of peer-to-peer trading of solar energy among the consumers and prosumers, and that was a very successful project in UP, which was replicated with larger numbers in Delhi and in Calcutta in the last 2 years. And there is already a regulation issued by UPERC, detailed guidelines how this trade can take place that will help everybody. And last 2 weeks ago, we have ISGF along with our partners Power Ledger. We published a white paper which is a very compelling reading. You're talking about this kind of peer-to-peer trading and local energy communities create as the new way of getting flexibility for the grid. Local energy community generating clean energy and exchanging among them at mutually agreed prices will create islands within the larger grid, offering flexibility to the larger grid. It's a very compelling reading for that white paper, which is already being, we had done a webinar also for that. In the interest of time, the rest of the day we'll be discussing both these topics in 2 roundtables. First one on the digital tools. We have an expert from IEA, Mr. Brennan here. He will be presenting on the concept. We also have Aditi from Electric Power Research Institute. They have developed a tool for assessing the hosting capacity of distributed resources, storage, EV, rooftop solar, etc. on the feeder. It's a tool developed by Electric Power Research Institute for NREL, and she was an expert, so she's here, will be presenting on that end of this first roundtable. And followed by the three blockchain pilot projects which you have done, and the experiences and lessons will be presenting today. With this, I will request Mr. Rohit Bajaj to give some few opening remarks, followed by Mr. Ganesham Prasad for the inaugural address.
Thank you, Mr. Reggie. Very good morning, everyone. All the dignitary on the dais, Shri Ghanshyam Prasad ji, Chairman CEA, then Shri R.P. Singh, former Chairperson UPERC, Mr. Vimal Mahendru, and Mr. Anil Rawan. This is indeed very, very interesting thing that we are discussing today, and I am sure the 2 roundtable that we are going to organize in the second half of the session will surely take us through the minor details of it. But I just want to present one viewpoint here. We have an ambitious target of adding 40 gigawatt of rooftop solar. We have come thus far, the numbers shared by Mr. Reggie. But the pace that we were expecting, or the pace that we wanted, it is not moving at that pace. We have to accelerate it further. Government policies that has brought us here, there are so many subsidies which are there, state government, central government are promoting this in a big way, but still the addition has been slow till now. So as one of the major market operator in the country, we believe that to make it sustainable, to make the growth sustainable going forward, it is very important that we connect this with some sort of market mechanism, so that going forward there are incentives or realization on the basis of capacity that is being created, on the basis of supply and demand which is going to be there in the country, that should derive the incentives and that should derive the capacity addition in future. I'll give you one similar reference, what happened in case of conventional capacity addition that we have done in majorly around 2010, 11, 12. Once the framework was created for introduction of power market, lot of competition started amongst the developer who wanted to create IPPs. In 2008, 9, 10, 11, we were facing huge deficit in the country, but with the power markets being in place, with the trading being in place there, it started to give signal to the participants that what sort of prices were prevailing on the basis of demand and supply. And suddenly we realized that lot of capacity addition started. From deficit to surplus. In fact, in 2014, in last 4-5 years, when we added 1 lakh capacity, we suddenly became a surplus country, and so much power was available for participants to buy. Not many people were interested in entering into long-term PPA because now they have realized that whenever they want power, they should be in a position to buy, and there is ample availability in the market. At one point in time, there were 35 gigawatt of merchant capacity in the country. Today, that number has come down because some of that has already been tied up under long term. So this sort of framework, if we can create in the distributed generation also, distributed decentralized generation also, then it would be sustainable on its own. Then no more interventions, no more subsidy, no more support would be required. And if we can do that, then we can actually march towards achieving our targets. So incentives and realizations will be decided by the market, and that is the best thing that we can do. Some of the states have been they have done noteworthy work. We have example of UP where we have regulations in place, peer-to-peer regulation. Delhi has also come out with the draft regulation, and we feel that other states seeing this and seeing the result of some of the pilots that has been done, I'm sure they will also take this path, they will work on it and then formalize more such regulation, and then we will have a proper framework, and going forward the job will be easier. So with this, I conclude my opening remark. Necessity of the time. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
We have the honor of inviting Chairman CEA Sri Ganesham Prasad ji to make the inaugural address.
Good morning to everyone and all the dignitaries on the dais, and most important, off the dais, who have really spared their time to be a part of this very, very important workshop, which is being organized by ISGF and in support with all the IEX and others. The topic which have been selected, I think I was a part in March also, wherein I had suggested a few things, and I'm sure those things have been incorporated there. We have been working, as rightly pointed out, that we have not moved at a pace at which we were supposed to in the space of rooftop solar or the distributed generation. But seeing the conditions and seeing the path or energy transition path that the country has to take, the quantum of solar requirement, solar power requirement or wind power requirement, or for the matter RE requirement, is going to be tremendous. The simple projection which have been done by CEA for 2030 also shows that we require something like 290 gigawatt of solar alone. The 32 projections is further enhancing to roughly 300 or 300 plus. If you see 2047, that figure is still mind-boggling. So until unless we try to approach in a different manner, probably we'll be entering into a zone of land crisis, which has already started happening, even though the penetration is hardly 70 gigawatt as of now in the solar space. So as the other countries has also moved, I think probably we will also have to accelerate the pace of development of rooftop solar and distributed generation, both of them, because if you have the concept, continue with the concept of the solar parks of 20 gigawatt, 30 gigawatt alone, we are finding, particularly from the space of planning for the transmission network, we have seen that in Bhuj area alone, we have Bhuj 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I don't know where it will end to. Similarly, Fatehgarh, we have already planned up to Fatehgarh 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like that. Similarly, any such belt you see, it's a mesh of transmission system that is getting created and which is loading on to the tariff. And in the last few years, the transmission tariff have jumped almost double. So this is again going to impact the consumers in any way, either whether we waive it off or we don't waive it off. Ultimately, the consumers have to pay these prices. So in these context, I feel that we need to really push the solar PVs and solar PV in a distributed manner and the rooftop solar as such. Now comes the question, if we put these capacities on a larger amount, then this also must be factored in the planning process, in the grid operation process. So how do we really do that? Right now we don't have the visibility where it is located, who is contributing to this, who is not contributing to this, which is generating, which is not generating, as we do for the other sources of electricity. And particularly whatever sources of electricity are there, they are at least hooked up to the grid. And we know precisely in what time block, at what instant of time, which is the source which is generating and where the power is flowing, etc., etc. So there is a huge amount of coordination, control, so that we are able to maintain the grid operation in a very, very secured manner. The grid is becoming very, very large, and we have already handled something like 223 gigawatt of peak demand this year. It's a huge. And luckily, we have been able to meet that. There was no shortage on that particular day, mainly because of the solar capacity that we have added. Because of the demand shift, the peak is now occurring during the daytime. That effort will continue, that will try to shift the demand towards the solar hours so that suits to the Indian conditions. But at the same time, unless we really precisely know where these distributed generations are located, where these rooftop solar is located, the data gets collated at one place, passes on to the DISCOM level, then at least the SLDC knows about it, where and how they are able to get these impacts. And going forward, the RLDC and the NLDC all has to be coordinated in that particular manner. So in this particular scenario, and when we are talking about, say 40 gigawatt was the earlier version of the targets, and now it is getting revised to 60 gigawatt, which we have all recently discussed in MNRE. And since it was not happening, so we thought, can we try to impose some kind of an obligations onto the DISCOMs? So that process is under almost finalization. Probably very soon you will find some kind of an obligations coming to the DISCOMs to promote rooftop solars and distributed generations. And this will come as DSOs, distributed energy service obligations. It will be quite a small number initially, but that will gradually lead us to something like 60 gigawatt by 2030. You rightly mentioned that Gujarat is the leader on rooftop solar. They did had very good policies within the state. More so, it has been public oriented and the consumer oriented, which found that there are use cases and there are good applications of that, and they are able to gain in terms of the tariff. Of course, there are other nuances to it. If you keep your tariff high, retail tariff is high, you find a value to it. But at the same time, there are places where you find that the retail tariff is zero. That is a free power which is being given. Probably they might not find any kind of incentive. So all nuances are there in the retail tariff business. But nevertheless, we have to see that, of course, regulatory commissions are doing their own job, state governments are doing their own job to promote all these places. But what ultimately is required is, if we really want to avoid huge amount of investment in the transmission and try to see that these solar PVs get the best value right at the place where it is getting generated and is being consumed, I think we have no option but to go for this. Second point that I wanted to touch upon today is, because that's again going to one aspect that I told you is the planning aspect. Second, I have told is the regarding the grid operation aspect, because we need to know these values, know these in a real time when it is happening. Third, that will probably come is because we are also talking about peer-to-peer or that kind of a concept, which is again going into that means it is getting generated somewhere, simply getting accounted somewhere. So these kind of construct is also going to be slightly challenging, particularly from the perspective of grid operations. Maybe good to account for, absolutely no issues on that. These also needs to be promoted, but then some method has to be evolved so that there is a clear visibility, at least to the load dispatchers who really knows how it is being accounted and what are the impacts of all this. Maybe tomorrow we will be moving towards smart homes as well, or maybe vehicle to grid kind of a concept, or maybe demand response in a larger manner. So all these aspects are definitely is going to be impacting the discoms, and the discoms needs to plan accordingly, and not only plan in a longer time horizon, but in a very shorter time horizon as well. That is, within each 15 minutes time block, they must precisely know what is going to be the impact of all these elements. So if we have to really go to that level, and 15 minutes I am talking for today's conditions, we are also, if you have seen our market report, wherein we have already recommended that 15 minutes time block also needs to be changed to 5 minutes time block, because more and more RE is getting integrated, and we must have a very close visibility to those kind of a concept as well. And with 5 minutes time block, even the RTM, which is now 1.5 hours earlier, so that was likely to come to something like maybe 45 minutes. IEX is already here, so probably we are targeting that kind of a visibility so that the renewable people, they are able to predict in a much precise manner in a very close time frame, because as you are moving towards closer to the time of delivery, then your predictability or the forecast becomes more accurate. So all these nuances is going to come into the sector, and which I feel that until these are captured in a nice manner and given a greater visibility for everyone, whether it is a planner, policymakers, regulators, even the discoms, and everyone for that matter, and more so to the consumer themselves. I think it is a great job which is being done by ISGF. The last point that I'll definitely touch upon is we definitely need that standards to come as quickly as possible. So unless we make those standards precisely, I think the things may not fructify. With that, I'll conclude my opinion, whatever I had. Thank you so much. I'll take leave because I have some meetings.
Thank you. See you. Still we are short of audience. Confirmed people are still on the way. Digital tools, one of the main digital tools coming into the distribution grid is the smart meter. Today, India, we have close to 3.5 million smart meters, of which 3 million are installed and managed by IntelliSmart, a new initiative of Government of India. Many of you are aware of that, but you don't know the importance with which this company is gaining momentum. It all started with ESL starting 5 million smart meter contract in UP and Haryana some 5-6 years ago, of which they have installed close to maybe 1.5 to 2 million only so far. But 3 years ago they decided to spin off that from the ESL's main business as a smart metering as a separate business, and given all the smart metering and other digital tools business to IntelliSmart, which is co-promoted by Energy Efficiency Services Limited and the National Infrastructure Investment Fund under Finance Ministry. So I have the pleasure of inviting Mr. Anil Raval, Managing Director of IntelliSmart, to give his views, and he has been developing this business passionately in the right fashion. We have seen smart metering happening in last 20 years across the globe. Many people have done well after several failures. Well, that was in the first phase, second phase. Now there are several lessons. We can straight away do the right way, which only in India, as of now, IntelliSmart got the equation correctly and is being done correctly. And there are some 42 agencies empaneled by REC as AMI, SP or smart metering service providers, and many of them are yet to come to anywhere near a practical, scalable solution to be implemented on ground. Even some of the private utilities who embarked on smart metering are still struggling, whereas IntelliSmart got their act correct and they have done well. And now for all these new digital tools, this is going to be one of the main important tool is having smart meter. A peer-to-peer trading or a local energy market or any of these new things can be done only with a smart meter. So it's so important. So we requested him to come and talk about how, and they already have signed up for close to 20 million smart meter rollout programs in India, which they are leading. So I insisted to come and talk about this particular project, how the grid is being digitalized through smart grid, and the amount of data, 96 reads from a meter in a day, is a humongous amount of data, and the new digital tools, how we can leverage to bring more intelligence to manage the grid and energy consumption taking place in the grid more efficiently. Over to you, Mr. Raval. Thank you.
Good morning, and thanks a lot, Reggie. I think you've done it all, and not much to add, but still I'll try and add some color to what Reggie made things to really appear to be. So IntelliSmart, I'll just brief for 2 minutes about IntelliSmart and then the larger topic of digitalization. So IntelliSmart is a joint venture of NIF, which is a Ministry of Finance backed fund, and ESL, it's a NIF majority company. And our main drive is towards digitalization in the power distribution sector mainly. So when we talk about digitalization, it's largely starting the country in the form of smart metering, as we are fully aware. So we have a reasonable share of smart metering market through competitive bidding, currently the way it stands. And we would continue to have more. But story actually starts there, not ends. I understand and appreciate that having smart metering in a right manner itself is quite a challenge in the country. It would be anywhere, not only in India. It's a bit more difficult in India because of the psyche of some of the consumers in the country that power is free, which actually is not, we know. So it's taking some time this to sink in the consumers to understand that power is not free, and smart meters already are talking about paying the user charges. So that creates some amount of political economic conflict on the ground, along with the back-end technology, because smart metering is not about metering. It actually, metering is very small act of smart metering. The real act lies behind the meter in terms of the cloud applications and the data you manage. So it makes it extremely high skill activity. That's another part of the story which makes it a bit complex. But then I would feel that country is solving it in a great manner. Why I'm saying great is in terms of the model which we have taken in the country. After, I think, very significant evaluation of various options, countries opted for a really good commercial model. And when commercial models are in place, things get solved sooner or later. And that's what I'm very hopeful about. So program is moving extremely well, and IntelliSmart is trying to shoulder it to the extent it can. But our focus would be on delivery with quality, then on quantity. We have been having very large number of debates in our board itself, that what number is the right number, to which I have always been saying. Even yesterday we had a long discussion that no number is the right number, it's only right delivery which is important, because there have been issues in past which actually require to be done away with when you are trying to roll out this program in a very effective manner. So that being there about smart metering, but let's think beyond this. I would think that smart metering is a way to do things better in the smart grid and not the end in itself. So when you talk about smart meters, it has to one side solve consumer pain, not increase it. That's one very big task. And other side, it has to manage grid in a manner that it's really responsive in view of the significant RE integration required and solar rooftop which we are talking about. Why we didn't have very high quantum of solar rooftop is known, and I need not deliberate on that, but the fact of the matter which I understand, and being in close touch with distribution companies, almost all of them, I'm aware that the data in terms of registries of solar rooftop or network planning at the, I would say, down the line, the grid is really not there the way it should be. I'm not confident if distribution companies can tell me how much EVs can come where, because network planning at bottom level is, I can say confidently, just not there in shape. So these are the two big issues in the country when it comes to solar rooftop or even RE integration. While smart meter would solve it to some extent, but there's one more piece which a country need to think beyond smart metering, is that once this data is coming, how this data should be integrated with network planning and registry of solar rooftop. Both are not there. And if you don't have, then you're doing patchwork in the network down the line, at least down the DT. We have solved transmission planning extremely well, I must say, because I have been part of transmission evolution in the country for reasonably large time, and when PPP was just not there in transmission, we started working on that. It has got solved extremely well, I would say. But have we really solved at the down the DT? Just not. Let's be sure on what we don't have. We don't have. So we are working now on, after having a good portfolio of smart metering, we are working on network planning and data registries. We are already launching pilots. P2P would come in shape based on these things only. If you don't have network planning, if you don't have the network, if you don't have things in place, you don't have the regulations, you won't be able to translate on the ground to the consumer. And unless you touch the consumer positively with some amount of economy built into this will not pick up. This can be picked up in pilots. So picking up would require network planning for sure, data registry in a massive manner, and regulations. I would think these things are required. First two we are working on. Third, I'm sure Reggie's team and many other are really doing well, and respected RP is here, and I'm sure UPERC done extremely well on there. So these are the areas which require serious attention, and energy transition required far more investment than smart meters. We as country should not get satisfied with smart meter, whatever 3 lakh crore we were talking about. We should not actually stop. We should start thinking more now. Smart metering thinking started deep in terms of private investment to about 3 years back. It is now translated. This is the time to think 3 years ahead. What beyond smart meters? What kind of economic framework you need to be given to the market? How you invite private players into this? How you invest into the network side in terms of particularly the planning side of things, so that you can deliver. Why I'm saying so, it's extremely critical. I'm sure all of you must have read about CBAM, which is very interesting. It's not very nicely structured nomenclature, but this carbon border something like access mechanism or something. Now this is a very unique market regulation. I think country, and we being on the forefront of the energy transition curve, we should be very conscious and cautious on this. This is not a bad regulation, let me tell you. We may fight this regulation and oppose it, but it doesn't make sense. It is for sure going to come, and it's necessity of the time. It may be sounding against developed countries like India. So this regulation says that if you do not produce your goods with net zero focus or say specific parameters, you would be asked to pay the non-tariff kind of charges when you export to the certain nation. What is bad in that? Let's be practical. This is the global requirement. You have to be net zero because there's only one planet, one nature, we are all connected. So everybody has to contribute. We may say that why should we contribute more and why should they contribute less? This fight would go on, but at the end of the day, this will happen. So now, if my industry has to come up to be net zero, it has to have RE. naturally. And if you have lots of RE and it's not integrated and in terms of demand side management, how do you deliver it? This is the next big economic thing country is going to face. And we need to think seriously that what investment in what way is required to precisely be competitive globally and still being environment friendly and eco-friendly and sustainable as per the need of the globe. These are a few things which I thought it is a very good platform to really share, and that's where I feel huge investment is required beyond smart meters. I think country now should start with coming out with the guidelines, regulations, and the documents that how to really incentivize investment into areas beyond smart meters. So with these small thoughts, thanks a lot, Raju, for having me, and thank you for hearing me. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Raval. Let me invite Mr. Vimal Mahendru. He represents India in IEC Standardization Committee. He is currently Vice President of IEC and also Chair of the Smart Energy Standardization Committee. That's a great honor for India. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. How much time do I have?
Tell everything which you are doing at IEC.
Yes. Thank you very much. Slight correction, Reggie, I got promoted actually. I was representing India on the board as the standardization board member from India since 2015. From January this year, I've taken over as chair of the board. So I'm no longer there as representing India, but India remains closely in my heart. Thank you very much for this opportunity to be here, Reggie. I think ISGF and IEA doing an excellent job, and thanks for this invitation. India happens to be my home also. Even though my office is in Geneva and I should be actually sitting there, but I prefer to be here. Maybe it's because, you know, our life and lifestyles are so corrupted by all the facilities we have in India, which in Geneva I'm not used to doing my own housekeeping, laundry, kitchen work and everything. So it feels better to be here. Having said that, I think this is also a great time to be in India because monsoon, in spite of all the challenges we have, it's also so life-giving. If you see around Delhi, this is now the time when the whole city is as green and fresh as you can ever see. I love being in India in the rain, and if I could go back to my childhood days, I would still be out playing in the rain somewhere. I want to just quickly mention the report and the work that IEA is doing. IEA has just launched, or you're going to launch today, the report, Unlocking Smart Grid Opportunities in Emerging Markets and Developing Economies. This report has a nice strategic collaboration between IEC and IEA, especially in energy efficiency and that area. In fact, we are doing a lot of work in this space, and being globally known for the international standards that are made on the IEC platform, I think this is creating a unique opportunity for us at the international level to try and address big global problems, but do them in a good, democratic, consensus-driven way. And in that, one thing that I wanted to highlight here, I don't know how many of you have seen the movie Current Wars. Anybody who's seen it? It's a Hollywood movie released about 2 years back. You should watch. It is about the early days of electricity. It's not a documentary. It's a full-blown movie, but it's based on true facts. It's about the life of Thomas Edison and Nikola Tesla, and how they were collaborating at one time and then competing, and then how Westinghouse and General Electric came in and what happened. It's a very interesting story, and some of what we see happening today is actually having roots in the kind of challenges that were faced at that time. I encourage you to read it and to see that movie, and also see how energy efficiency is becoming more and more integral to our work. I want to take the opportunity to specially share of how the world of electricity is changing as I see it sitting in Geneva. When I joined in 2015 as the board member, the board was saddled with key innovations at that time. 2015 is not far back, it's only 8 years back. And the key innovation was HVDC networks, some kind of smart grid standardization. That's when we started doing the smart grid standardization roadmap, which is work that we did jointly also with IEA at that time. But from then on, today, I'm surprised how much the world of electricity itself has changed. So what are the key topics that we are talking about? We have totally gotten away from talking about standardization of products. So we rarely get any new items at the board level to discuss, where cable standards, transformer standards, metering standards, this is all done. It's a mature industry. The folks know what's going on. There may be some tweaking of standards every few years, but that's by and large. So what are we working on? Quantum technologies. How quantum technologies are going to influence electricity and our grids. We are talking about digital twins, creating digital twins and getting standards for digital twins. With all the data that you were mentioning that is coming up, talking about cyber security. I mean, imagine cyber security, we were thinking, oh, it's okay for the computer industry and the IT industry and our computers. Now the computers are getting embedded into our own electrical networks. So can we ignore them? No. I just saw RP Singh ji seeing on his mobile phone the data and showing us the live data. Imagine if the data is coming here live, where is the cyber security around it? And I hope nobody can hack these systems. We have good technologies, and I'm sure you have implemented some good systems, but this is what is going to be required more and more in the emerging world. There is hardly anything that I see today that is happening in IEC where either softwareization has not taken place or electronics is not embedded itself into it. If you look at transformers, there are committees today in the IEC which are working on smart transformers. Now, what are smart transformers? Primarily what has happened is we have taken conventional transformer performance objectives and put a layer of softwareization, data, communication, and remote management on top of it. And all of this combined is where the word smart is coming from. And the big thing that I find that's happening, and it's likely to happen in IEC and internationally, the demand for smart is growing so much that we are actually contemplating, why don't we create a horizontal committee at the international level on smart? So that anything and everything, if it's going to be smart, how do you make smart transformers, smart cables, smart connectors, smart meters, and smart power generation to all connect in a smart way? And this is leading to a demand for system standardization. When we talk about rooftop solar, I incidentally am also chairing the IEC committee on direct current, DC. And one of the projects that we have undertaken and a standard developed, which is now published, is for rural electrification using same rooftop solar concept, but purely remaining in direct current, so that every hut can have a small solar panel on the top, connected to a small battery and a charge controller, and just one light bulb inside. This has transformative power. None of the equipment, the solar PV panel, the battery, or the charge controller, or the LED bulb is anything new. There are technical committees and the standards are fairly mature. So what did we standardize? We simply standardized the system through which it will be done. For example, we standardized the voltage that all these devices would connect at 48 volts. Why 48 volts? And I'm sure you will all understand that this is SELV, safety extra low voltage. And at this voltage, electric shocks are not lethal and they're equally safe. So you can get rid of a lot of the safety parameters that you need to use over there. DC inherently is not unsafe. It is only that if we don't manage it at the right voltage or at the right current levels. And I think with a lot of these changes taking place, I find that in the emerging times, we are likely to see a big shift where even as distributed energy sources is coming into play, I'm finding demand for localized generation and consumption coming into play also. The World Bank has come up with a seminal report which is called the SMAP multi-tier framework. I don't know if many of you have seen it. If you can go on the web, it's available there. What they have done is they've not looked at the infrastructure side, but tried to answer that if a person needs to run his home, household, or small business, how much electricity do they need, and what is the best way to get the electricity out to them? And so they have devised a system where entire electricity needed by an individual or a household or a small business is in 5 categories. Category 0, of course, is where there is no electricity, that a hut or a household is not even connected to the grid, and there is no rooftop small solar power generation there. But then level 1 is just 1 light bulb. Level 2 is about 250 watts, enough for a small television and some more light bulbs, some simple kitchen work, etc. there. And then going on to level 5, which is almost everything that you would need in your and my homes, or small businesses, shops, kiosks, roadside dhabas and restaurants. So this is World Bank, and they are providing funding to this. The standard was developed last year, and the World Bank is specifically referring to this standard. And in Africa, which had the biggest challenge of electricity access, they are beginning to use this standard and taking World Bank funding for developing their electricity access programs. So I encourage you to take a look at that work. This work was contributed by Indian experts also, and it's available here, and I think BIS, Bureau of Indian Standards, is fully involved with this program also. I want to talk about a couple of other things. We talked about carbon footprint and carbon accounting. As much as being Indian, and I would feel opposed to this change, I agree with you, is coming. There is a lot of demand for carbon footprint accounting. Most of the developed or so-called developed economies are coming together to develop a standard, and this standard is being worked by both ISO and IEC, which will work together to develop this standard. And this is all about carbon footprint accounting, which can be traced to the specific equipment also in the electrical network. Now, when you do that, it's obviously going to be a challenge at times. How do you look at this, and how do you address your own countries, your own industries' capabilities? But I see it also as an opportunity, because this will bring a bit of a playing field where everyone will know what they need to do so that they can boost their own exports and their own equipment going across borders. So with this, I think we have a lot to do from India. Personally, I find one of the biggest challenges of India is not that we are not innovative. I have seen that India is one of the most innovative folks in the world, and I can confirm this in any platform. The challenge is we don't get involved. What I really miss at the international level is that Indian entities, companies, or Indian experts are not getting involved in global standards. So if we don't get involved, what happens? Somebody else is writing the standard, and then we get busy conforming to standards written by others. We are sitting on a gold mine. We have the biggest market in the world. The innovations that we have, nobody else has. And yet, I can give you lots of examples where we've been a lot more innovative and driving a lot of the technological changes, but we don't get them standardized. And as a result, we keep following the rest of the entities worldwide. With that, thank you very much for the opportunity. I'll be here till lunch, and I hope we get some more time to engage in good conversations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. In fact, we started with LVDC low volt DC grids way back in 2013. It was actually Professor Ashok Jhunjhunwala. He pioneered, his building in IIT Madras, he made completely into 48 volt DC. But many other people who were working on DC grid that time were opposed to 48 volt, and they wanted 24 volt, and some people in Bangalore want even 12 volt. So Jhunjhunwala sir had called me to his office one day in 2013, and he said, these are all BLDC fans, light, everything in my one building where he operating was on 48 volt DC, no AC connection at all. So I said, this is working perfectly, and still all your folks in Delhi and Bangalore, they don't want 48 volt. I said, definitely we will. So we had 3 meetings. We brought all the people together, made a LVDC India forum, and then the following year we brought them signed with IEEE and with BIS. Now there is a ETD 52 which is developing standards for that. So very good work we have done, far ahead of everybody. Finally agreed to 48 volt. So with this, I have the honor and pleasure of inviting former chairperson of UP Electricity Regulatory Commission, Sri RP Singh, the most progressive regulator India has seen so far, and we've been personally taken interest in bringing in new technologies into UP, and which prompted ISGF to go and do pilot projects on one blockchain project, number 1, which we did successfully, and for which regulations also came. Number 2, real-time pricing, time of use pricing. So last 1 year we have been working on that in UP in 50 voluntary electricity consumers participated. We were every day in midnight we were sending a pricing signal for the next day 96 blocks. What would be the addition over and above their existing tariff, a surcharge or a rebate. High solar hours in the afternoon, which entire North India also experiences. We are giving 1 rupee, 2 rupee, 3 rupee rebate for people to motivate them to use more electricity during such surplus hours, and putting a surcharge during peak hours in the evening. And it project went quite well, and till September 2022 to 30th June, we were almost 10 months we've been running this program, and the draft report is submitted to everybody. So that also with the blessings and support of Mr. RP Singh we have done. So these are all pioneering work. First time, not only in India, in South Asia, anyone doing these things. So sir, over to you, sir.
Thank you, Reggie, for inviting me and giving me this opportunity to share my views. A lot had already been said by my previous speakers, and on the topic of, I think, digitalization, I see, I'll talk more about the electricity as a sector. It's a very, very complex sector. Everyone sees from his own lenses. It has multi-dimension, be it legal, be it commercial, be it technical, be it financial, and of course the social part. Also, no one can define what type of commodity electricity is. Whether it is a public good, whether it's a merit good, sometimes it's become political good, and managing such a complex subject, because even the governments, they keep on, post-election, they talk about the economic pricing of the electricity. At the time of election, they say it is a public good and you have to give, it is and then the economists, they say that it is a merit good, it has to be promoted for consumption. So the managing such a complex thing, which is dynamically changing, is true electricity. I'm saying you cannot predict at it's like Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, you cannot define its location. So we have to see from that perspective. But of course, after having said that, we have to work towards the decarbonization target for this world. And the decarbonization, the two bases is decentralization and digitalization. So decentralization, we are talking about the rooftop solar and all other distributed energy resources. And digitalization, we are talking about going deep into it, bringing it smart, making it more and more interactive with each other. Now, what is smart? Smart is nothing but is a IT embedded on a system where you have got bidirectional communication. It sends you signal. So that brings some sort of consideration for the standard setters, that what sort of things have to be brought into the standard setting. I'm sharing the views. Smart meter is a pertinent thing. The standards which were prescribed allowed certain type of communication. Now, there are various communication means, be it RF mesh, be it cellular, GSM technology based, or even the carrier current. All communication options are there. But they determine what is going to be the framework in which it can be implemented. So means that there is no one-size-fits-all solution for any particular type of challenge. You have to tailor make and design. If you are operating in a high-rise multi-storied building, then these GSM-based smart meters, sometimes they don't work. In fact, our experiences was that the 2G, which was earlier years, that was the basis for telecommunication, is already a dying technology. So the discoms which got, stuck up with that sort of technology, for them is a sunk cost. So when we are setting up standards, we have to keep envision what is going to be the future and what is the window or the life cycle of that technology which is going to be there. Most of the time we find that we enter at the later stage of the technology cycle and get stuck up with obsolete technology. That adds to the burden of the sector. So these are the basic problems which we are facing. Now, another thing is that when we are talking about smart meter, that you need to have MAC address for each and every piece of item. That MAC address will communicate, and if you are going to have a high-speed transaction, that means you need to have 4G or 5G. Are there enough bandwidth available for these type of devices to interact? That has to be seen upfront while setting up standards. Because as it was rightly pointed out, we are reactive in the standard setting, we are not proactive. So what happens, our voice or our position sometimes doesn't get reflected, and we land up with something which we don't have. As a result, we are more dependent on resources which are outside the national boundary. So these things we need to keep in mind. Now, coming back to the promotion of renewables, and the topic I thought was blockchain based. This is necessary in case, because we want to promote more and more renewable sources, and rooftop is one of the important aspect of that. And in UP, our experience was that the tariff structure is such that it gives incentive to certain type of consumers, and it is more loaded towards certain type of consumers. So this arbitrage created a perfect market for transaction to take place. So that's why we promoted this peer-to-peer rooftop-based, blockchain-based energy transaction system. The advantages are that it promotes decentralization, and it's a democratization of the energy market, where intermediaries are eliminated, and even a small or poor consumer can participate. Whether he's a prosumer or is a consumer, he can participate in that. The second advantage is that it is transparent and it is secure, because blockchain itself is considered to be quite safe and secure. And with the new techniques or the token system which are now being used, I think Solano is being used, which is much more faster. I think it is not unlike others which are on proof of work, very energy intensive. I heard that Solano is now more faster than other technologies on this blockchain system. The additional advantage that it also promotes resilience in the community. Whenever there is a grid disturbance, the community within the same distribution area, within the same distribution transformer area, they can interchange energy with each other. And the grid optimization can also take place on the real-time basis. And these can be also scalable. These are also scalable and interoperable. So there are many positive aspects of this peer-to-peer energy transaction. And I think that we have this guideline which we have developed needs to be really pushed through by the states and the ministries, so that the demand for this type of thing takes place. And I think in coming days and coming years, we'll have more and more opportunities created based on this blockchain-based technologies. I think I have nothing more to say, because most of the thing has already been said, and I conclude here.
Thank you very much for all the introductory interventions by the dignitaries. We'll take a tea break and then start with the first round table. And we are 1 hour late, but we'll still try to wind up by 2 o'clock. The lunch will be ready, I hope. After the first round table, we provisioned a tea break, but we'll do a tea break now.